What's up, everyone? Welcome to episode 25 of the Chat It Up podcast. As always, I'm your host, Shooter, bringing you interviews, news, and reviews about all things Upper Peninsula. If this is your first time listening in, welcome. And if you're a return listener, as always, thanks for sticking with me. Today is Memorial Day, which is a day that we honor all of those who paid the ultimate sacrifice while serving this country. This is a debt we can really never repay them, so I will just simply say thank you, and may they all rest in peace. I've got a really great episode for you guys this week. We're going to start with Yooper News and This Day in Yooper History, and then we'll jump into this week's interview. So I guess let's get things going then with Yooper News. My first piece of Yooper News is from May 22nd of this past week. It was the 16th annual UP Honor Flight. And if you're unaware of what this is, it's an incredible organization that flies war veterans out to Washington, D.C. to spend the day viewing all of the different war memorials around the city. These veterans are given first-class treatment and tours, and they're even given police motorcades everywhere that they go throughout Washington, D.C. The best part about all of it is that this trip or this flight is at no cost to these veterans themselves, which is pretty special. And this year, 76 veterans were able to make the trip, which also is incredible. So a huge shout out to everybody from UP Honor Flight. It's an incredible organization, so well done all around there. My second piece of Yooper News is a bit of sad news, and that's that Green Bay Packer legend Bart Starr passed away on Sunday at the age of 85. Bart was definitely a representation of Vince Lombardi in the glory years for many, many Packer fans, throughout the UP and Wisconsin and all over the world, really. He brought the Packers 5 NFL titles, including Super Bowl 1 and 2 victories. I know back in 2014 he had suffered a major stroke and he never really quite fully recovered from that, but he was an outstanding quarterback and an even better humanitarian in person, so rest in peace to Bart Starr. He will definitely be greatly missed. Okay, it's time for This Day in Yooper History, brought to you by the good folks over at pasty.com. That's pasty.com, and also the Pasty Central Facebook page. So here it is, May 27th, This Day in Yooper History.
Pasty Central Day in History, May 27th. On this day in 1794, Cornelius Vanderbilt was born, one of the wealthiest entrepreneurs in American history, who built an empire in shipping and railroads. Vanderbilt owned the Lakeshore and Michigan Southern Railway, as well as the Michigan Central Railroad and a dozen others. Numerous sources cite Vanderbilt as the earliest advocate for building a bridge across the Straits of Mackinac. The minutes of the Board of Directors at the Grand Hotel on Mackinac Island in 1888 claim that Vanderbilt introduced the idea of the Mackinac Bridge during that meeting. This is one of history's mysteries, however, because Cornelius Vanderbilt died 11 years earlier in 1877 at the age of 82, with an estate valued at over $167 billion. Pasty Central Day in History, May 27th.
All right, once again, a big thank you to the folks at pasty.com and the Pasty Central Facebook page for This Day in Yooper History. It's time for this week's interview, which is with my friend Marina Dupler. I met Marina around 2013, and she and I went through the Lake Superior Leadership Academy together. And she's got a really great story, and I will be the first to tell you that she does a way better job of telling it than me. So we'll just jump right into things here. So without further ado, let's chat it up. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sitting here on a beautiful sunny day on the porch at the gorgeous Barrel Beam with my good friend Marina Dupler. Marina, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah, so we'll just kind of jump right into things here. So I know that you're from Wallace, Michigan, which obviously is a very small place here in the UP. What was life like for you growing up in a rural spot in the Upper Peninsula?
Yes, so born at Marinas General Hospital, which was the closest hospital, but yeah, raised in Wallace, and the home of the DeYoung Zoo, which
Right.
We don't live too far from there. I want to say maybe like 7 minutes drive. I think it was an epic bike ride, but we did bike ride there once.
Sure.
And it was a really simple existence. And I'll date myself that there were no cell phones, of course,
Right.
and we didn't have cable TV.
Sure.
Dish TV was not a thing. We just lived in the woods, and my dad built our house, and it was a very simple existence. Life was waking up with mom and going to pick berries
Sure.
for hours. And, Dad, the soundtrack of my life was the chainsaw on the weekends. And not really too many cares,
Sure.
no friends nearby. And I had 3 sisters, so... Yeah, it was
Just a lot of
blissfully
adventuring.
simple. Yeah, a lot of adventuring.
And when you say your dad built your house, he built like the coolest house ever. I saw you recently posted it's up for sale.
It is for sale,
but
yes.
the tunnel, does the tunnel go to the garage, or where does that tunnel go to?
Yeah, so my dad's a big fan of kind of going big. So he got really tired of shoveling. There was a long path between our front door and where the bus would pick us up. And he just got really tired of shoveling that. So he built a long tunnel so that he would never have to shovel it again. So yeah, it's kind of a funny thing.
But also the house itself, you can tell someone put a lot of love into it, and it's very unique and a lot of great woodworking, and it's just a really, really cool house.
Yeah, my dad is really talented, and he just got into it. And he gets into a lot of things, but the wood came from our property, and he designed it and built it with the help of friends, and it was kind of one of those projects never got finished, and that's why I say every weekend it was like, oh, we're going to finish the trim work here, and, trim out the window there, and...
But what a fun place to grow up. It's just very, whimsical would be the word I would use for it.
Yes,
It has a very whimsical look to it.
Yes, it does. I always joked with friends it looks like an upside-down cereal bowl.
Yeah.
But it's a geodesic dome.
So your husband, Nick, I know he's from Daggett, which isn't far from
No.
Wallace. So were you guys like sweethearts growing up? Or
Yes,
you were?
very cliche.
Okay.
He's from Daggett. I'm from Wallace, so he attended Daggett Elementary, and I was Mellon. But then we came together in Stevenson. That's when the schools kind of merged.
Yep.
And, we first went out in 4th grade, and then again in 6th.
Okay.
And then pretty much from junior year on, we went to both junior and senior prom, and then came to Northern together, and I've pretty much just been together ever since.
Was the plan always to just come up to Northern like when you graduated? I mean,
No, I'll own it that I think I just kind of followed him.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, you say you followed him up here, but in your own right, I mean, you got a degree in public relations, which, personally I think that fits your personality very well. You're very friendly, outgoing, you're very engaging. Have you always kind of been that way, or were you as a kid more kind of like reserved or shy?
Yeah.
I mean, some people kind of grow into those personality traits, or is that, something that you've always had?
I think I've always made friends really easily.
Okay.
And my daughter has the same quality.
Sure.
We just make friends easily, and I'm happy for that. And so, yes, I earned a public relations and communication degree from Northern, and my joke is always I got a BS in BS because one of my big talents probably is I can talk to people. I really enjoy talking to people, and people of all different stripes. I think growing up, we were different. We lived in a different home, and, just big family, and we lived on, things were so different that I have I very much have an appreciation for different and can really accept a lot.
Sure.
Yeah.
So when you finished school, which was right around 2003, where did life kind of take you at that point then? What was kind of the game plan?
I really didn't have a plan. And, now working at Northern, I'm so admiring of the students that are applying for jobs and building their portfolios. I really didn't have that. So I was a campground attendant at Tourist Park.
Oh, okay.
I think I applied at Econo. I don't even know that they hired me. I mean, I just really didn't have a plan. And I moved home and just thought, man, I want to get back to Marquette. That's where all my friends were. I graduated in 4 years, but a lot of my friends took 5. Nick took 5.
Sure.
And I think I did a giant scrapbook of my college career. I was just sad about it all being done. And I interned at our local hospital in their marketing department. but also interviewed for a job or an internship in the governor's office up here.
Oh, okay.
And Stacy Welling-Hoy, she told me, hey, there's a job opportunity in my hometown in Powers at Pinecrest Medical Care Facility doing like community relations, PR, marketing, all of that. And so I applied and got the job and spent the first, I guess that was my first job, 2.5 years at Pinecrest.
Okay.
And then Nick got done with college and worked in for tech doing like AV type stuff.
Sure.
And then we decided to move to the big city of Madison, Wisconsin.
So what really prompted the big move? Was it like a job opportunity, or is it just you wanted a bigger city, or what?
Yeah, again, not really a plan, other than we had spent our entire life in the UP.
Sure.
And thought, let's move. Now is time. And we evaluated Madison and Minneapolis, and we thought the traffic in Minneapolis was too horrendous, so we stuck with Madison. And Nick got a job at the DNR doing chronic wasting disease communication. And then actually it was through another alum that I had went to school with, Mary Ellen Charbonneau. Potenin was her maiden name.
Yep, she's a good friend of my sister's.
Yes, of course, yeah. So
shout out to Melon.
Yes. So she kind of introduced me to Annie Early, who's another Northern alum, and she worked at a government affairs firm called, it's changed names, but at the time it was called Martin Schreiber and Associates. And so I worked there for 5-ish years.
Sure. So you mentioned briefly Nick was working for the DNR, so he ended up getting his degree in biology, right?
Yeah, minor in biology and majored in media production.
Yes, okay. So he was working for the DNR at that time, and then I guess what prompted his whole... I know he ended up interning at Great Dane Brewing. I know he was into home brewing at the time. Is that kind of what really just prompted him to find an internship, or was there like a big kind of like moment where he was like, okay, I'm going to do this? Or
I'm sure he did have a moment that I quickly stifled. His cousin kind of turned him on to home brewing, and he was doing that in our basement and really getting into it, and said, gosh, I've looked into it, there's a school, and I think I could go back to school for this. And I was like, you got a great job at the DNR, like maybe do an internship and see if you like it. And so he kind of was that guy that was maybe a little bit borderline annoying to the Dane, and Michael, who's the head brewer there, just to say, can I shadow you, can I intern with you? And they let him. They were very gracious, and he got that professional work experience, and he was like, I really love this.
Sure.
And I was like, well, I guess go to school for it. Let's, explore that. And so he went to school for it. He spent it was like, I think, a 15-week course, so half of that in Chicago, and then the other half traveling Europe and working at a brewery in Germany. And he came back and was like, I want to get a job in this. I'm so into it now. His biology minor really played a part in his being successful in school.
Sure.
And he, the first job he got, the only job offer he got, really, because he just got on the road and popped into breweries, was at Milwaukee Brewing Company. So it was an 1.5-hour commute both ways.
Oh, wow.
In the sun.
Yeah.
And sun your eyes, both commutes. And then he did that for a year, and it was 4 10s. So it was like a very just arduous
for sure.
year. But he loved it. And then from there he got moved a little bit closer to Madison, working at Tyranina Brewing Company in Lake Mills.
Yeah.
So that was sort of his Wisconsin brewing experience. I'd say.
So obviously, while he's kind of going through that experience, you're still kind of like holding down the home front in Madison. How would you say it compared to like living here in the UP? I mean, because Madison is very much a college town.
Yep.
And I've been to Madison quite a few times, and I love it. I almost kind of describe it as a bigger version of Marquette.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know if you'd kind of feel the same.
I do. Yes.
So.
Yeah. I mean, we loved it there. And I think the work I was doing, legislative affairs, I really enjoyed.
Okay.
But it was very stressful. I mean, it was a really good job, but it could get stressful at times. Yeah. And I think, Nick, the commute and things, it was stressful. And I think Marquette to us was always somewhere we wanted to retire, but it definitely felt like this place was where you, how would you say, you work to live versus Madison maybe felt a little bit more live to work.
Yeah.
And we were anxious for that change.
Sure.
So, yeah.
So, you just said you guys were anxious for that change. So there must have just came a point where you're like, we want to get back.
Yeah.
I mean, what really brought that back?
I think maybe similar to your recent move and Patty's job was sort of like, let's just explore it.
Mm-hmm.
And there was Wes and Andrea Pernsteiner, founders of Ordock Brewing Company, had posted on Pro Brewer, which is a job site where people go to look for brewers. They had posted they needed a brewer in Marquette, and we thought, well, let's talk. Let's just see where this goes. And just kept talking, and eventually were offered the position, and I was like, I always joke, I love President Obama, but I do not like change.
Right.
It was so hard, and I thought, are we ready to, even though I knew something kind of had to change, and I really did love my job there, and was I ready for the change and selling our house there and moving back, and but we just ultimately decided to do it.
Yeah, and so, I mean, not to completely fast forward, but now this is basically like right around 2012, right? Or a little bit before then?
Yep.
Maybe 2011-ish?
We got married in 2012 or 2011.
2011, yeah.
And then, moved here.
Yeah. So, okay, so you decide to make the move back. Nick kind of dives headfirst into this Ordock Brewing.
Yep.
And how great you end up getting a job back at Northern, right?
Yes.
So your first job there was alumni relations, correct?
Yes.
So what kind of really went into that role?
Well, again, I didn't really have a plan. I thought about like maybe, kind of lame, but I was like, maybe I'll work at a coffee shop. I really want to learn how to make lattes. And that was my plan, because Nick had moved here in November, and then I stuck around in Madison till April and kind of got things finished up.
Sure.
And moved here, but again, saw the job posting with the alumni office at Northern, applied, and really, really lucky to get the job. And then started working like pretty much as soon as I moved back. And that was this weekend 7 years ago.
Wow.
The Monday or Tuesday after Memorial Day I started at Northern. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes.
So with this role for alumni relations, obviously you're reaching out and you're talking to people that have attended the university that are, I'm assuming they're all over the globe. I mean, or were you just kind of more focusing on the Midwest or just the U.S., or what was more your kind of reach that you were trying to hit?
Yeah, I mean, Marquette is a lovely, lovely place, but sure is hard to get to.
Sure.
And we have alumni all over. And while we have a huge population right here in Marquette County, in the UP, downstate, we have alums. The next most populated alumni population is Wisconsin, Northeast Wisconsin, huge alumni population there. Illinois, but then beyond that, Minnesota, Florida, shocking people. So Phoenix, Denver, California, all over. So we have, I always say, Wildcats are everywhere.
When from in that job, did you ever have like a rough number of like how many alumni you have out there? Living more than 50,000, and I want to say, those have earned degrees that maybe are not with us anymore, over 70. So it's That's really cool to think about, only because I'm sure there's a lot of Upers, people that are from the UP, but like you mentioned, there's people from all over the globe that maybe came here for a while and then left, but it's like then they're kind of taking a little piece of the UP with them, all over, which is kind of neat to think about, especially, 50, 60, 70,000 people.
Right.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah, it is.
Was it pretty rewarding for you to did it feel kind of like coming full circle, kind of coming back to your alma mater?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's really an honor, because I feel like Northern is such a big part of my story.
Right.
And I loved my time as a student there so much that to be able to serve my alma mater in this way, it's just so rewarding. Yeah. And I really enjoy it.
So, and now you've kind of recently, as of this year, you've transitioned away from alumni relations, and I know now you're doing some marketing stuff.
Yes.
Or do you want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah. I moved to dining services, which another great thing about Northern is you can kind of hop around positions and, again, just serve in different capacities and not change employers, which is so cool.
Right.
Moved to dining services. I love food and beverage. I love events. I think Northern's food and the team in dining is incredible.
Absolutely.
And gosh, to be able to join them was really, really cool.
Yeah. Well, and how exciting now you've got the Northern Center that's I mean, I don't know, has it officially opened or is it about to open?
Nope, you can
I think
walk
I saw
around
you on the paper giving a tour or something.
Yeah, Vanna White.
Yeah.
Yes, so we had public tours this past week, but it is open. Phase 1 is open.
Great.
The bookstore is open. It looks amazing.
Yeah, it looked gorgeous.
The grand ballroom, meetings, events, weddings, it's incredible what it looks like now. So definitely stop in and see it.
I'm going to have to. Like I said, the pictures that I saw, I was completely blown away.
Mm-hmm.
So just to backtrack a little bit, so you're working at Northern. Nick's kind of got the Ordoc kind of getting up off the ground. What was I'm guessing that was pretty I don't want to use the word tumultuous, but a pretty kind of crazy time for the two of you. I mean, moving back here, starting a new job, both of you really, him kind of starting a new career. I mean, how do you balance all of that at one time?
I think, gosh, I just don't have a really good memory because I don't remember. I think we just did it.
Yeah. I'm
a big fan of not saying getting through life. I want to enjoy each
Right,
and every day.
Right.
So I'm sure we did. I mean, man, it seemed in a way we didn't have kids at the time, so we could kind of pour ourselves into our work.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it didn't feel as hard as maybe it could have.
Yeah, well, and it's funny, it just actually popped up on my Facebook memories that the soft opening was on May 22nd, this past week of 2012.
Right. Yes.
Which I thought was kind of funny because I didn't plan that or whatever. When I knew I was coming up to talk to you, I'm like, oh, that's funny that it kind of popped up that they were just kind of having that soft opening. And, now obviously it's grown so much since then.
Yes.
And, there's been a lot of change there. But that's also kind of right around the time that you and I actually met.
Mm-hmm.
Through the Lake Superior Leadership Academy for the LSCP, which I found extremely valuable being not from Marquette. I mean, you went to school here, so obviously you kind of probably had a little better feel for Marquette, but I feel like it's extremely valuable for somebody that's not from here. Would you say that you'd kind of agree?
Oh, absolutely. And even going to school here, I mean, life was pretty much contained to campus and the bars that
I was going to say the bars.
So I don't know how involved I was in the community.
Right.
But we learned so much about the community, and I really feel like I made so many friends.
Absolutely.
It was amazing.
Yeah, I would agree completely. I mean, I count you in that group of friends that I feel like I probably wouldn't have if it weren't for going through the Leadership Academy. So
yes.
I guess free plug, if anybody out there is listening, thought about going through the Lake Superior Leadership Academy, I would highly recommend it. So you're working for Northern, Nick's working at the Ordoc. How exactly did the idea come together for Barrel and Beam?
Yeah, that's, I think when Nick first started brewing, he loved Saisons. Mm-hmm. He loved Belgian-style beer. And I think he was able to do that at Ordoc. But I think just kind of having his own brewery, making a lot more barrel-aged beer, solely focusing on farmhouse and barrel-aged beer was kind of something he's always wanted to do.
Sure.
And he had found these different outlets to kind of do his brewing passion, but the idea of having his own space and solely focusing on those kind of beers was always there. Yeah. And I had always just been like, oh, God, just work for the man, or whoever that
right.
is, man or woman. I just was not a risk taker.
Okay.
And so I was really, all along, probably not as supportive as I could have been. But a few things happened that I think made me shift that.
Sure.
And really it gets back more to family. I mean, we had our daughter at that time. Mm-hmm. And gosh, so much of life changes when you have a kid. Like, priorities change. The time for you is almost non-existent. I mean, it can really be all-encompassing. So the capacity to take on something for you seems so much smaller than prior to kids. But I think, it just forces you to think about life really differently. And the other thing was my parents got divorced after 30-some years.
Okay.
And it just got to a place where I was like, wow, life is really short. Mm-hmm. And what are we all working for?
Right.
And I don't care about money. I don't have a lot of it. So it's not like I'll know what I'm missing.
Sure.
But it got to a place where it was just like, instead of why, it was why not.
Sure.
And let's just explore it. Let's just see. And let's just start living life. It felt like a big, let's just do it. And whatever happens, happens.
I like that. I like the switching from why to why not.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very much like you, as I'm not a risk taker. So to get to that point where you're like, okay, let's jump. Mm-hmm. That's kind of scary.
Oh, very. Yes.
Well, and especially, I mean, you guys are located in a building that has a lot of history. Mm-hmm. And when you guys basically took over the building, it needed a lot of TLC. So it's not like you're like, okay, well, let's build a brewery in a new building or do construction. It's like, okay, you're going to rehab this place, which, it used to be the Northwoods Supper Club. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of mystique and kind of history behind that. So it's almost like you kind of have not big shoes to fill, but you want to pay respect to that history there. I know you probably know some of the history a little better than I do. I wasn't always, or has that always been the Northwood Supper Club?
It has.
Okay,
yes.
So how old is this building actually?
Yeah, so we're kind of sitting and looking out what was Highway 41. Mm-hmm. And it was really, there was a couple from Wisconsin, kind of like Nick and I moving from Wisconsin to here, and they were visiting relatives on the West End and drove to Marquette along Highway 41 and just fell in love with the area.
Okay.
And they decided to sell their Wisconsin farm and move here, which was like, there was nothing around.
Right.
Shopco wasn't even here. So it was really in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And it was Depression era, so not many people had a car.
Yeah.
And they thought they'd start a restaurant, a supper club. And gosh, people really did think they would lose their shirts, and they lived in a tent out back with their kids while they built it, a log cabin. And this was 1933 when this all started.
Yeah.
And when the cabin was done, they moved in upstairs and they made all their food from scratch.
Wow.
And they just really developed an incredible reputation for amazing food and an experience, and people would come from all around.
Yeah.
And at one time, it was the second oldest restaurant in the state, owned by the same family, the Klum family.
Yeah.
And they added on, and now it's a 16,000 square foot building.
Yeah, I mean, it's huge.
Yes, that's, addition upon addition. And but yeah, it closed in 07-ish, around there, and then 2008 happened, the economic downturn.
Sure.
And the plan was to turn it into condos, and of course with the economic downturn, that was not feasible. And it just sat. It had been stripped for condos, so, there was no drywall. There was nothing in here, but there was also quite a few holes in the ceiling from where, the fireplace was. And it was really, when we toured this building, someone had suggested it to us, and man, it was in really rough shape.
Right.
I mean, just piles of snow everywhere, pigeon poop everywhere. It was really gross, but it was one of those things where it's like, let's just keep exploring. This is one building, and we just kind of fell in love with it, because you're right. So many people have celebrated so many special occasions here, and this was the place to go to celebrate those milestones. And we feel like our beer is a little bit higher. It's higher, very high quality, higher price. We feel, and we want it to be special. So that matched.
Yeah. So did you said, you looked at this building and you guys were kind of exploring. Did you already know you wanted to revitalize an old building, or was there a different plan and you just kind of then decided to?
Yeah,
or
we were really drawn to old buildings.
Okay.
We really were. I mean, there was a building in Ishpeming we looked at that was old. There was one in South Marquette that we looked at, a few that were old and all needed some degree of work. This one was in the worst shape. But gosh, we just fell in love with the story.
Sure.
And you're totally right in that we really wanted to do right by the building. I mean, we almost feel like this building isn't ours. We're stewards of it and caretakers of it, but it's bigger than us. And so we didn't want people to come in and say, oh my gosh, look what they've done to the place.
Right.
Oh, why did they do that? So.
Well, and it's absolutely gorgeous inside.
Thank you.
I know you had a lot of help from another Lake Superior Leadership Academy person, Kate Havel. So shout out to Kate if she's listening in. So that had to be kind of fun to kind of collaborate with her. I mean, once you kind of fixed the big things with the building and you can get down to the nitty gritty and kind of decorate the place, it's got a great feel to it. It's very welcoming, I would say. So.
Well, thank you. And I mean, whenever somebody compliments a building, I'm the first to say we had a great team, and we did. I mean, Klausner Construction, cannot say enough good things about them, and they're Marquette-based.
Sure.
And have renovated some of the historic landmarks here in Marquette, and this being one of them, and they did a great job. And then that's the fun part. Like, yeah, it's really scary taking out these big loans and you feel like you're signing your life away, but then you're like, I'm going to enjoy the fun part, working with people like Kate, craftsmen, and women like her and others, and our friend Allison of Curio Design, like being like, you're awesome and I want to work with you, and let's all just work together to make this place awesome. And that's what we did. Yeah. And I appreciate your kind words. Others have said it. Nobody said it to my face I don't like it. So yeah, we're pretty proud of it.
Good, you should be. Obviously not everything can be sunshine and rainbows all the time. I'm assuming there's been some kind of speed bumps and growing pains along the way. What have been some of the kind of things you've had to work through with this whole process?
Yes, definitely. Not all sunshine and rainbows. I think as people, I mean, we don't know what we don't know. And in business, I think sometimes people think, oh, but you should know. It's like, well, I'm just like anybody else. I don't know.
Right.
So we're figuring it out. So things like parking, huge challenge. Yeah. And when you don't really understand how much parking or lack thereof can impede your ability to develop a property.
Sure.
So these are things, and money's tight. And when you get these last minute surprises, like, oh, yeah, I don't really have money to throw at that problem. But you have to make these big decisions. And I'm someone that likes time, that likes to feel comfortable and explore the options. And in business, there's just simply no time sometimes. You just got to do it and just make the best decision you can with the information you have available. So,
do you feel like you're kind of growing up where you did kind of made you well equipped for that? Because at least as I'm sitting here listening to you say that, I'm kind of thinking, okay, well, you've got to make quick decisions on your feet, and it's not like you have anyone to go to kind of solve it for you, and maybe you don't necessarily 100% know the answer. So I'm thinking, okay, well, like you mentioned, you grew up, it's not like there was like TV and the internet and whatever, and you're living in more of a rural area, and you and your family, I would guess, as stuff popped up when your dad's building the house or doing different things, whatever, you just kind of had to figure it out on your own, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. There's a total connection there. Growing up, I'm first generation Youper. My parents are not from the UP. We have no family nearby. Yeah. And family's so important when you have kids, or so nice to have, and we didn't have that.
Right.
It was not going to grandma's. Yeah. We had no aunts and uncles, cousins, and we really did figure it out. We were kind of our own unit, and I think what's kind of made me sad over the years is, my three sisters, they live in other states. I have a sister that lives in another country, and we're not together. But in many ways, our parents taught us to be independent.
Sure.
And they put a great value on being independent and figuring things out, and not, really being hands off.
Right.
And sometimes I lament that, but I do recognize it's an incredible gift.
Sure.
So you're right. There's a total connection of just figuring it out.
Yeah. So you just kind of mentioned, like being a unit, and so you've got you and Nick and your two kids now, and you and Nick, you're not only husband and wife, but you're also business partners. I mean, how do you juggle all of that all at one time? I mean,
yes, it is. It's totally doable and figure outable, and I think for me, I've tried to do more compartmentalizing versus multitasking. So when I'm at Northern, I really focus on Northern, and I don't think about the business or the kids or the home. Those are my 8 hours to put in to Northern. And when I leave, I pick up my kids, and my phone is down, and I'm with my kids and present with them till they go to bed. And then it's my barrel and beam time. Okay. So really kind of saying these are my chunks of time that I devote to these things, and not trying to multitask is good, because if a thought does pop into my head during the day, I got to email this person, I just put it on a Post-it note for that night and move on. Sure.
So I know also, and you touched on a lot of things. That's a really good segue into the recent female entrepreneurship panel that you just had here at Barrel Beam that you guys hosted. because, like you just mentioned, you're a mom, a wife, you're also an employee of of one place, but a businesswoman in another sense. So you've got to wear a lot of hats. And I think it's great that then you're able to host, a panel here or a discussion with other women out there that are in the exact same boat as you, because you're not the only one out there that's kind of going through this. It looked on TV6 like it was pretty well attended. I mean, do you have a feel?
It was.
Yeah.
I think, gosh, I don't know the number offhand. I'd say 75 to 100 people.
Wow, okay.
Primarily women. We did have some men in the audience, but it was great. Great energy in the room. I was happy to be on the panel along with Jen Ray of Donkers in the Delft.
Yep.
Shayla Bunce, who runs Rock River Farm with her husband, and then Madeline Goodman, who owns Mad Goodies. So female entrepreneurs at different stages in business, but I loved it. The women were engaged, they were asking great questions, and I think just the vibe in the room was a very positive, motivational one.
Very cool.
So it was great.
What were some of the kind of big topics that you guys went through?
Many of what you asked, like how do you juggle it all? And I'm the first to say, people will say, how do you do it? And it's like, I don't know that I am doing it.
But you are. You're being very gracious, but you are.
Well, but it's, anybody that thinks that I've got it figured out, I'm the first to say I don't, and just learning and trying to be better every day. So it's a lot of questions like that. When do you hire your first employee? And but I'm the biggest cheerleader for anybody that wants to open a business. And I think I'm really blessed that when we talked about our business early on, people were nothing but encouraging. And that was great because I could get in my head really quick and be like, this is a terrible idea.
Right.
What are we doing?
Yeah.
So I don't need to hear that from other people.
Sure.
And people were just really nice. And so I'm always happy to be that person for someone else. And if that means I'm watching your kids so you can take a meeting, I'm taking you out for coffee and talking about how you can do it,
right,
I'll do it.
Yeah.
I love that stuff.
I think I hope that there continues to be more of these kind of panels and discussions. With the economy changing the way that it is and technology and everything, you continue to see stories like yours come up, people that are branching out, being entrepreneurs and wearing also multiple other hats at the same time. And it's important for people to know that they're not alone and that other people are kind of going through it and that there's resources out there.
Yes.
So how great to kind of put everybody in one room and be able to kind of talk that out. So I guess one of my last questions here is, what advice, if there's anybody out there, especially any females out there that are like, I want to become an entrepreneur and a business person, what sort of advice would you give them to kind of take that leap? Yeah,
absolutely, you can do it. I'm a big believer in people can do whatever they put their mind to. I think for me, being a parent has been the best entrepreneurial boot camp ever. If you can be a parent, you can run your own business because the challenges and the similarities are a lot the same. And really, start asking people. Like, people do come out and ask me, how did you do it? And I'm happy to introduce people to other people that have helped us. And so happy to be that resource, but just know you can do it and just take those little steps every day or every week. Make that call, ask for that coffee meeting, reach out to places like the Innovate Marquette Smart Zone or Invent at NMU, Accelerate UP. We're so lucky in the UP. I feel like we have such a great pool of resources. And I think UPers, we are entrepreneurial. I love just driving by and somebody says there's a sign out front saying I make my own lawn ornaments, and people do their own taxidermy.
Right? Yeah,
and I think the UP is just full of side hustles, and people
very much so. I'm kind of the pseudo king of side hustles, so I would agree with you completely. So there's a lot of side hustles out there.
Oh, absolutely.
But again, it kind of goes back to everything you're mentioning here. There's something to be said for being independent, but there's so many great resources out there, and you should never really be afraid to kind of ask for help with that stuff.
Yeah.
It took me a bit with writing Why is for Uper to kind of seek those resources out, because I was trying to do it all myself, and then I realized I couldn't.
Yeah.
So I've hit every one of my boxes that I wanted to check off with you as far as things to chat about. Is there anything that we missed or anything else that you'd like to add or kind of throw in?
I don't think so. Yeah, I think you've hit it. I love the podcast. I love your love for the UP.
Oh, thank you.
I'm just really honored to be on it. That's for sure.
Well, thank you. You know, I appreciate you coming on and kind of sitting here and chatting with me. Like I said, we've known each other for quite some time, and since I know you listen to the podcast, you know then what my final question's going to be. How do you like your pasty?
I like it with ketchup.
Ketchup? You're a ketchup person? Okay.
Yes. Although I'll say if I have a vegetarian one from Gene K's, it doesn't mean a thing.
Gene K's are tough. Those are. I was going to ask you what your favorite one is, and I'll give them some free airtime because I'm a big Gene K's guy too. So.
I know. I really enjoy theirs, and their vegetarian one is so good.
All right. Awesome. Well, again, Marina, I can't thank you enough for coming on the podcast. This has been really great.
Oh, yeah. The feeling's mutual.
Okay, it's time for the takeaways from my chat with Marina. The first is the idea of pursuing a dream. Now, obviously, this idea isn't unique to just her, but I really appreciate her outlook that life is short, so why not do something that you love? I think that this is a really great perspective to have because so often we set aside certain goals and dreams that we have and we tell ourselves, well, I'll just get to them later. But what if there isn't a later? My second takeaway from my chat with Marina is a very simple phrase. She said to me, instead of why, it's why not? Which again, I think is a really fantastic perspective to have. It's very easy when we sit and we think about our goals and dreams, or even when we talk about them, it's super easy to focus on questioning your decision. And that's when doubt and fear tend to creep their way in. But if you take Marina's approach of why not, you can focus on the good and all of the positive possibilities that could happen. So my challenge for everyone listening this week is I want you to think about a goal or a dream that you might have, and instead of why, it's why not. Then get out there and crush it. Chat It Up is a bi-weekly podcast about all things Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Wherever you're listening, please subscribe, rate, and leave me a review. You can also find Chat It Up on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you for listening in. I'm your host, Shooter, reminding you to keep your chin up and your eyes forward.